Hi friends! Today we're going to read a book called Wings for Pear by Ingrid and Edgar Parrin Dueller. Halfway between the sea and the clouds there lay a farm tucked under a crag. For hundreds of years it had nestled there, high up on the mountain wall. Stone steps chopped into the rock led up to the farm from the boathouse down at the shore. There was no other way to get to the farm, for nothing but goats' trails led up to the mountain tops in the clouds, and the only neighbors were birds who soared over the steep. On this farm there lived a boy whose name was Pear. All day long, little Pear played, tied with a rope which kept him from falling over the cliff and into the sea far below. Yes, the land was so steep that even Pear's father hung on to a rope when he cut the grass for his sheep and goats. But the grass was sweeter and greener than any place else. "This is our paradise," said Pear's mother, and she scrubbed the weathered house walls till they shone like polished bone. "Here we are free as the birds." But Pear did not feel free as he stood there held down by his rope. He watched the eagles sail by on broad wings. He wanted to be free and fly through the air like them. "In Birdland, the young ones must learn to fly, as little children must learn to walk," said his mother, and showed him an eagle's nest nearby. "Bird children, too, would like to be free, but they know that they must never go over the edge of the nest before their wings are strong. Soon you can run and climb where you want, but you cannot grow wings." Maybe not, thought Pear, but still it would be fun to fly. When Pear at last was let off the rope, he climbed like a goat, and his world grew wide. He ran down the hundreds of steps to row and to fish, and to go to school in the village. And up to the peaks of the mountains he climbed. Wherever the goats climbed, Pear climbed too. Up there above the clouds, he felt as if he were flying. The fresh mountain winds cooled his cheeks, and when the clouds lifted, the whole smiling world lay at his feet. But one day, as he stood there dreaming, a dark eagle swooped out of the sky. First, Pear was afraid, but when he saw the eagle pounce upon his littlest goat, he forgot his own fear. Before the eagle could fly off, Pear caught hold of the goat. The eagle wouldn't let go, but neither would Pear. With the goat on his back and the eagle flapping its wings over his head, Pear half slid, half flew down to the farm. There, his father came to help him. The eagle had found its master. "Now you have met with a fellow who thought that because he was strong and fast he could take what was yours," said Pear's father. "It isn't very often you meet that kind today, for we live in a world with law and justice, and you don't just take what you want. Your forefathers who built this farm, here high on the ledge, lived in a different world. Then the ones who were strongest took everything the weaker ones had and made them his slaves in the bargain. Everyone had to look after himself. And here, high up, your forefathers were safe, for when they saw enemies coming, they pulled up the ladders that led from the shore and no one could reach them. But today, we have chopped steps into the mountain walls, for we know that no one will attack us. The strong ones do not bother the little ones, and the little ones mind their own business." So Pear grew and was happy and carefree, for he knew from what his father had said he had nothing to fear if he himself did what was right. But a few years later, Pear sat on the stone steps and looked sadly at a changed world where his father's words were no longer true. Without warning, a strong enemy had invaded the country. Swarms of warplanes had swooped down from the clouds, and thundering war machines had spread destruction over the land. The fathers had stood up to defend their native soil, but they were too few and not well enough armed. They had believed in freedom and justice and had not been prepared to fight. Now the enemy had taken the land and ruled with an iron hand. They have burned my church and my school. They have taken all that we had, but they shall never get me, thought Per. The next day, he stood behind the ruins of his school when enemy soldiers marched the teacher and the parson away. For when the enemy had ordered them to teach what they knew was wrong, they had refused. First the enemy took our food. Now they have taken our teachers. Said Per, they think that when we are hungry and helpless, they have conquered us. Our teacher risked his life not to teach us the enemy's lies. We must carry on his work. So all the children met in the woods. There they held school together, and the big ones helped the little ones. But while the little ones slept at night, Per and his friends stayed awake, for they had secret work to do. And it was so dangerous that no one must know. The enemy had taken all the radios in the land to cut Per's people off from the rest of the world. But up in the eagle's nest, Per and 3 of his friends had a radio hidden. They wrote down the news and messages that came from a friendly country across the sea, and in the dark of the night they carried this news to the neighbors. They became so clever at hiding, they thought they would never get caught. But one night, all of the sudden, a little girl with a doll under her arm stood before them. "Your mother tells you to flee," she said to Per. "The enemy is at your home waiting for you and your friends, for they have found out about your secret. Your mother couldn't come herself, for she would have been followed. But I am so little, nobody follows where I skip about." Per didn't have much time to wonder then how his mother knew a secret, but often mothers know, just because they are mothers. On a tiny piece of paper, Per wrote the name of the boy who was to carry on the work and the place where the radio was hidden. He tucked the message into the doll's sleeve. "We shall hide in the bird's cave out on the coast," he said to the little girl. Then she ran back home with her doll, and the boys disappeared into the night. They climbed up across the wild mountains. At last, they came to the bird's cave. In the mouth of the cave, millions of seabirds swung back and forth like a white curtain. The boys went in and were hidden. There, they stayed for many days and lived on birds' eggs alone. Then one day, a fishing boat landed, and out jumped the little girl with the doll. "When the sun sets, the wind will blow from land," she whispered. "Then the fishermen will turn their heads away, and you must steal the boat." Everything happened just as the little girl had said. The fishermen turned their heads, and Per and his friends ran into the boat. The mountain coughed, and they were blown briskly out to sea. A 1,000-fold cry came from the birds was their last good farewell from their country. "Goodbye, goodbye, old motherland," cried the boys. "With bare hands we leave, but we shall return with arms and set you free." The fishermen had provided them with food and water enough to last for many days, and they steered for the land of their friends across the sea. The second day they spied a submarine patrolling the coast to catch anyone who tried to escape. They were afraid but thought fast. Hurriedly they put out their fishing tackle and pretended they were fishermen, and the enemy submarine was fooled and let them alone. For 9 days they sailed and drifted in the heavy swell of the sea. Their small boat was almost swamped. To keep it from sinking, they had to jump overboard and swim alongside while they bailed. When at last they hit land so hard that their boat was smashed on a rock. But now they had reached the shore of their friends, and a patrol bomber came out and picked them up. Everyone was kind to them and helped them in every way. But when Per and his friends were rested and dry, they had no more peace of mind. "We didn't come here to fare well ourselves, while those at home fare so badly," they said. "I want to be a soldier," said the first of Per's friends, "and go back and fight the enemy." "I want to sail on a merchant ship and take food to the hungry children," said the second. "I want to sail on a warship and sink the enemy's submarines," said the third. "And I want to be a flyer and clear the enemy out of over the sky of my country," said Per. Yes, their friends wanted to help them do all that, for they fought against the same enemy. But their own sky swarmed with enemy planes. They had their hands full defending themselves, and they didn't have a plane to spare for Per. "But yonder, on the other side of the ocean," they said, "there is another country which the enemy hasn't reached yet. It is still a bigger country, and there they have plenty of everything. There you can learn to fly." "I will gladly go to the end of the world if only I can learn to fly," said Per. He said goodbye to his friends and set off again on the dangerous seas. Enemy submarines lurked in the depth, and the waves were as big as houses. But the ship that Per sailed on was 100 times bigger than the fisherman's boat. And it was one of many ships sailing together. Protecting destroyers circled around them, and overhead an umbrella of airplanes watched over them. So Per sailed far and further than far, and at last he came to the land of the free. The country was so big that the sun shone in the east while the moon still shone in the west, and the roses bloomed in the south while the snow lay deep in the north. Lush fields rolled onto the edge of the sky, and there was plenty of everything. And everybody was kind as kind can be to Per, who had come so far to learn to fly. Wherever Per looked, he saw factories. Out of them rolled tanks and guns and ships and planes in endless lines. For here the people had understood in time that right does not stand without might. Here they were making planes and guns enough to defend themselves and their friends, and to fight the enemy. Per looked at the well-fed, well-dressed children playing in the sun. He could see in their smiling eyes that they had never known hunger or fear. And these children will never have to know it either, thought Per. Their freedom will be defended. But behind these happy boys and girls, Per seemed to see a long row of hungry and ragged children. They all held their heads high, but it was as though they said, "Hurry, Per, we also should have been like these." And Per hurried to a training camp far north in the woods where he could learn to fly. There was almost like his own country. The houses were built of logs, and among white birches of his country's flag was flying. In the woods, the wolves howled at the gate, where a bear was a watchdog. The colonel himself came to welcome Per and said he needed every boy who wanted to fight for freedom. But instead of putting him in a plane, he put him in a kitchen. He wanted to see what kind of fellow Per was. Yes, Per peeled potatoes from morning till night. "I didn't come all this way to peel potatoes," he thought. "But if that will help my country, I will peel." "Your spirit is right," said the colonel. "Now you can learn to fight. and the sergeant drilled him backward and forward and said, "You must be so tough that your fame travels ahead of you, and the enemy takes his heels and shouts, 'Here comes the dangerous pair.'" Yes, Per learned to fight, and at last the great day came when the colonel said he could learn to fly. On the ground, he learned about the weather and winds and how to find his way through the clouds, and in the dark, he learned how to take off and how to land and how to know foe from friend. And once I thought all I needed was wings on my shoulders and air under them like the young eagles back home, said Per. And when he took his plane up for the first time, he didn't feel much like a carefree bird soaring through the air on strong wings. The plane wobbled and tipped, and it felt as if the earth and the clouds were having a race around him. He was glad to have his instructor to help him, but one day, all of a sudden, Per could feel the air under the wings carried him just as safely as the water when he was swimming. "Now I really have wings," he shouted, and he went into spins and loops and rolls and dives while the instructor watched him from the ground. Then the colonel put shiny wings on his chest and wished him Godspeed to go back and fight the enemy. "You are strong," said the colonel to Per, "for you are going into battle, not to conquer and make people slaves, but to free them out of the darkness. Grow your spirit, which will break the enemy's strength. You and others like you will carry the victory on, each of you in his own land. Never in the days of happiness to come must you forget the will to sacrifice which the war has taught you, for then you will have won not only the war, but also the peace." And Per flew back across the ocean and took off to meet the enemy. His engine hummed, and he hummed with it. Then his voice rose over the hum, and singing, he went into battle. For the first time, Per was singing. Halfway between the sea and the clouds, there lies a farm up in the mountain wall. It was my mother's paradise, for there she was free, and free she shall be, sang Per as he dived for the enemy and shot. Millions of boys are behind me, fighting like me for those they love. Now we are strong, but the enemy's strength is broken. Soon we will have used up all his tricks. We will shoot him out of the sky and defend him on land and at sea. On a bomber plane I will fly home. I will pull the bomb doors open, and out shall fall not bombs, but food. The children will not duck and run, but will smile and wave to the plane. I will see how a new spring erases hunger and mistrust from their thin faces. Then I will fly up into the clear, washed air of spring and soar over the eagle's nest. And over my home under the crag, Mother will stand in front of the house and clasp her hands in wonder. She will say, "Look, Per has wings." Thanks for listening.